So this video is going to be like no other video. For this one, I'm actually just going to be going around doing chores around the world, but I'm actually going to be doing story time with you all for my adventures in high school. It's so weird to think about now. I'm not even that like far graduated, but it feels like forever. I'm going to be telling you guys about the story of my first ever interaction with my brand new history teacher, my junior year. And the time we, you know the guy from Ferris Bueller, the teacher, like Bueller. I'm gonna tell you guys about the time that I literally had a teacher like this. Okay, so the scene takes. I'm gonna talk about my history teacher first. For the sake of her name, I'm gonna call her Mrs. A. So you have to keep in mind this is about my junior year, and I went down to this small little charter school, right? So everybody knew everybody, and basically we're all one giant family, and so there was really no big bullying or like freakouts or stuff like that. Like drama still happened and stuff, but it definitely wasn't as bad as normal public high school. And well, we were about 1/4 in through our junior year. And to give you some context, our previous history teacher had just finished telling us that she was actually going to quit, and she found like her new dream job, you know? And so she was going to go pursue to be a lawyer. And we were all kind of frustrated because she made history so easy because she would just give us note cards and we'd be able to use the note cards during tests and stuff, right? Well, our new teacher comes in. Mrs. A comes into the room and we get introduced to her and we're all like, oh, okay, yeah, you teach at like the school that's right next to ours, which is basically like a sister school, right? There's a high school, there's our high school, and then there's a high school right over across. And we kind of shared teachers and shared school events, stuff like that, if it was a really big event. And so she comes over, Mrs. A, and she's like, hey guys, I'm your new teacher, you know, I hope you have a good time, you know, blah, 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 blah. And so, well, that was our first ever interaction, and our old teacher had taught the rest of the day. Next week rolls around, and Mrs. A comes into the class, and I was feeling a little bit tired from my night before, and so after going over her new syllabus and everything, and talking for a little bit, after I was tired, I was sitting in the back row with one of my buddies, and she goes, well, I'm going to take a nap. And I thought about that, and I was like, you know, that nap sounds really good too. And so we both just passed out in the back, right? Like we were out because we were tired from today. And so poor Mrs. A, like halfway through her lecture, notices us, and it doesn't take her long. She comes over to the back table and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, am I boring you? And like wakes us up. And before this had all happened, she had actually started taking attendance, and this is not a good start to go off of. But she starts going around the room and she's like, why doesn't everybody just tell me your name? And we were all going around, and hi, my name's Brett. Hi, I'm Jacob. And finally it get down to me, and I thought it'd be funny for like once in a while, because my dad had this story. He hit a guy in the nose with a rock when he was playing baseball, but that's like forever ago. And so, but his name was Carl Weiner. And so I'm like, I'm Carl. And she's like, what's your last name? I was like, Carl Weiner. And everybody in the class turned and looked at me and they were so confused. They were like, huh? Like, what are you doing? And she like starts writing it down like no hesitation. I was like, oh, I'm just kidding. My name's Ryan. I'm joking. I'm sorry. And she goes, oh. So she changes it. She was a good sport about it. I totally messed with it. I thought she was gonna call me out on it because I thought we had met before, but she didn't catch it, and so she got a little upset, but she was fine with it, you know. And so finally, back to when me and my friend were conked out, she comes over and she's like, all right, Ryan, get up, you know, sit up, you know, whatever, wake up, and friend, sit up too. What do you guys think you're doing sleeping in my class? And I was like, oh, sorry, you know, I didn't mean to, you know, I just had a long night. And she's like, you couldn't have possibly been doing anything, you know, like the standard teacher lecture. But my friend had an attitude, and she was known for her attitude. She rolls her eyes, and she like sighs or whatever, you know, because she's tired. And the Mrs. A catches that, and she goes, oh, so am I getting a little bit of sass now? And so my friend just gets like bulldozed a little bit. And I'm just sitting there like, oh no, this is a terrible start, you know, but whatever. And so I sit there and we listen to her lecture a little bit more. Starting to feel it again, and we all start like trying to move our hands or whatever. And my friend just doesn't care. She goes right back to sleep as soon as she like stops teaching. Or as soon as she like turns around, she goes right back to sleep, and I'm like, well, I gotta fix this, so I gotta stay awake. And so I put my hand on my shoulder, you know. I was trying to stay awake, but it was still hard, and so class finally finishes and file out, and it was 5th period then, and my final period was 6th period, and it was about 2 o'clock when my 6th period psychology class started. And so I go in there and I take my seat, you know, I sit down. Psychology teacher's talking and everything. I'm like talking to my friends and stuff. I'm like, man, that was kind of embarrassing, you know, the standard thing. And they're like, yeah, I guess. Like, why were you so tired? Usually you aren't like that. And I was like, oh, it's, you know, it's whatever. It doesn't really matter. I didn't really need to tell them anything. I just had a busy night last night. And halfway through the psychology lesson, who comes in but Mrs. A? She walks on in, and I was like, oh no, like I feel this is not good. This is not going to end well. And she goes, I'm so sorry. And the psychology teacher and Mrs. A were actually really, really good buddies, so like he didn't mind at all. And she comes in, and he was like, oh, Mrs. A, what's up? And she's like, I just have an apology to make. Where's Ryan? And I was like, oh no. And I was like, I'm here. She comes on over, and she has Starbursts in her hand. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she was like, I'm sorry, I gave Ryan the full Mrs. A lecture today. That was kind of a terrible first start, you know. I think we can just start fresh and all that, you know, and everybody kind of has like a good chuckle and all that. And then finally, after she finishes, she's like, by the way, I have to ask, why were you so tired in my class? And I kind of looked up at her and I looked around the class, and I was like, well, it's just that my grandma fell over and broke her pelvis, and I was visiting her at the hospital last week. And the entire room goes silent. Everybody's and Mrs. A goes like this, covers her face, you know, and just starts crouching down. The whole class just bursts out laughing, and like the psychology teacher is like, like up there, you know, and he's like, you probably could have gone without saying that, Ryan. And I was like, I'm sorry, I was just trying to. And she's like, now I feel like a monster. And it was, oh my gosh, we had a good laugh about it afterwards, but it's so funny. We're good friends now, you know, and all that, after I graduated and all that, but it was so funny, the turn of events that happened. And here's the better story. This one is when I was a freshman. I was still learning all the ropes about, you know, being a freshman and all that. And we had gotten comfortable with our physics teacher. Physical science, not like CC physics or anything smart like that. No, we're like freshman year, we're like dumb as logs. And literally, I kid you not, oh my gosh, this teacher was literally the epitome of the Ferris Bueller teacher. He was monotone the entire lecture and would have a soft-spoken voice, and his chuckle would go, ah, 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 ah. That was his laugh. That was his entire thing. He would monotonely talk, and just everybody would fall asleep. It was impossible to stay awake in his lectures, and that's why I failed every test. I still passed, but I failed I'm terrible at science. Don't ever ask me a science question. Oh my gosh. And so finally, me and my buddy just finished, me and my best friend from high school, we finished our PE. And as we're sitting down, all the kids are like filing out, you know, all talking about, man, PE sucks. You know, all the girls are like, yeah, I'm so sweaty. And all the boys are like, yeah, we totally won that game. You know, we're all filing out. And me and my friend look at each other and we're like, you know, we should pull a prank on the school, you know? Like, I know seniors get to do it to the juniors and teachers when they graduate, but who says we just can't do it to our teachers in one period, you know? Why can't we do something subtle and just build up from there? We both looked at each other and we're like, yeah, let's do something to our physical science teacher. That's what we end up doing. We ended up looking kind of similar. Like people, if we were both standing, talking to each other, like against a wall, you know, if our faces were facing the wall, you know, and it was just our backs to everybody else, people would mostly get us confused, and they'd come over and they'd be like, hey, friend. And I would turn around, they'd be like, oh, sorry, I thought you were a friend. And I was like, that's fine, you know, vice versa. And so what we end up doing is that we swap clothes. Like, not everything, come on, but like shoes, jacket. I think we switched shirts, we kept our pants. We're not weird. But pretty much everything else, like watches and stuff on our hands, you know, mostly everything else we swapped. And so we walked in, and we didn't tell anybody about this. and only like one person who forgot something from the PE room came back, and our PE teacher was chill with it. She was laughing. She was like, like kind of serves him right, you know, because he's so bored. And so only one kid from our class who didn't even end up going to the physical science lecture ended up seeing us, you know. So we were all good. We were all for the clear. And so we walked into physical science, and we had our plans, and we sat down in each other's spots. And usually I was known as kind of like the talker, you know, like I would talk a lot next to my friends because I get so bored. And he paid attention and usually got good grades. And I was freaking out after I took his spot because I sat right next. There were 3 seats, 1 desk, right? And I was right in the middle, and everybody, the other kids were on the sides, right? So I sat right down in the middle, and I like kind of had my hands up like this, you know, so nobody could really tell when they first looked. And I had my hand like this to the teacher, so when he looked right at me, I don't, not sus at all. When he would look at me, it would kind of look like this, you know, and I kind of be like this and like writing down notes because I'm supposed to be my friend. I'm supposed to be really smart. And my friend was over on the other side, and he was just talking. He was talking like me. He was just being kind of a little louder than usual than I would be, but I guess I can't really say much because I'm loud anyway. He was talking to everybody. He would turn around and like almost blow our cover. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, what's up?" And like turn back and like, and he's right in the second row. We're both right in the second row. Like it's middle table, second row, pretty much middle of the room. Me in the middle, and then right over to our left is my friend in the middle as well. And so I was freaking out because I'm like, if he busts us, because I didn't know how strict our physical science teacher was. If he busts us, my grade's going to get even lowered, even more than it is. I'm going to get in huge trouble. So I was trying very hard not to like get caught. But my friend was having a shoot. He was going for it. He did not care at all. And so finally, like, our class how long was it? 56 minutes. And we would get off at like a weird number, like 26 minutes. Like 1:26 was when we would leave, you know, or something like that. That's just an example. But at 26, we'd usually leave. And so at like 45 minutes in, I'm thinking, I'm getting more confident. I'm like, okay, I don't think he's going to catch us. So I put my hand down, and right as I do it, the teacher looks right at me. And we make eye contact, and I was like, and he was all, and we both just kind of stared at each other for like 2 seconds. And he goes back to the board. Anyway, the equilibrium of the nucleus. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, did no one else see that? And I like turned to my neighbor, and they're like almost half asleep, you know. And I turned to my other neighbor, and they're like, because they're trying to get that good grade, the grinding. And so I'm like, was that just me? So I like turned around to the person behind me, and one of the popular girls is like, you know, sitting there, right? And she looks up and she's like, "What, Brett?" And she's like, "Ryan?" And I go like right up to the front again. And I pay her right attention. She's like, "I didn't even know you were right there." The whole period, like just in the middle of that. And I was like, and like all my other friends over there were just having to laugh with my other friend. And they're all like, "Oh, Brett's over here," you know. Teacher never found out. Physical science teacher, he never figured it out that we switched spots. And so then we go over to our English teacher, and our English teacher and the physical science teacher are actually brothers. So I'm like, for sure, this guy is actually like an actor. He has energy. He has momentum. He's gonna notice. He knows his students more. And so we go for it. We full send. We still switch spots. We're reading plays, and so we switch like characters. I was like a main character, and he was the narrator. So I became the narrator, and he became the main character. And so I'm over in his spot, you know, and my friend's doing the same thing as before. He's over there like, yucking it up with my friends, and I'm over here like, hand on the face. Nothing's going on, you know, like, don't worry about it. And he didn't take him long, because he loved calling people out, you know, that were like disruptive or whatever. And he was like, "Ryan, stop making so much noise." Wait a minute, that's not Ryan. And then my friend goes, "Nope." And he goes, "Then where's Ryan?" And he turns over and he sees me in his spot, and I'm like, And the whole class, I'm not kidding, I thought they were in on it. The whole class does like a 180 or something, or they all turn to me and they all go, and like one of the loudest kids in the class goes, "Wait a minute." And we fooled the whole class. The whole class thought we were each other. It was so funny. We never ended up doing it again. We should have near our senior year, but we didn't, and it was so funny. We did better things our senior year. We did better pranks and stuff our senior year. But those are stories for another time. But I wanted to tell you guys about that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys Thursday.